Hey yo, everyone! It's been a minute since we've talked about our gaming generation series, but fret no more, my friends, because Generation 3 has arrived. In the last couple of videos, we talked about Generation 2, the great video game crash, and the resurgence of gaming thanks to Mario and Nintendo. I'll be sure to link those below so you can check them out if you'd like. Anyway, Generation 3 is the era that directly followed the video game crash, so there might be some rehashing in here, but I'll try to keep it interesting. As always, if you enjoy the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Alright, let's get it. Alrighty, so let's take a hop into our time machine here and travel back to the year 1983, the official start of Generation 3. On July 15th, 1983, Nintendo released their first home console system, the Famicom, or as it's known in the United States, the NES. The Famicom found great success in Japan, but the market was significantly smaller than other countries, so Nintendo's next step was to take the console abroad. Originally, Nintendo had struck up a deal with Atari to license the sale of the Famicom in the United States. Since Atari had a majority share of the gaming market in the early 80s in America, and Nintendo didn't have much of a presence outside of a few arcade hits, they decided to approach Atari with the licensing rights to their Japanese console. Atari would distribute the Famicom in the United States under the name of the Nintendo Entertainment System. However, before the deal was finalized, Atari wanted Nintendo to straighten out their licensing agreements with other companies regarding their first-party IPs, such as Donkey Kong. The movie Tetris does a pretty good job of showing just how convoluted video game IPs were in the 80s, but essentially, Atari wanted the exclusive rights to Nintendo games along with the console. You see, in 1983, Coleco, another toy company, had the rights to distribute Nintendo games on video game consoles. Atari only had the rights to the PC distribution. So, until the licensing confusion was cleared up, Atari declined to sign an agreement with Nintendo. Unfortunately for Atari, 1983 was also the year the gaming industry crashed into oblivion, annihilating the company's stock value. With the video game industry now at an all-time low and the market seemingly up for grabs, Nintendo ripped up their contract with Atari and decided they would bring the NES to America themselves. With no true competition, the NES, along with its incredibly popular first-party titles, became an overnight sensation. The success of the NES marked the unofficial end of the great video game crash and ushered in a new era of gaming, the home video game console era. I mean, technically we had the Atari already, but after the crash, the NES completely changed how consumers viewed video game consoles in general. Generation 3 saw the resurgence of the gaming industry, with Nintendo leading the charge by popularizing 8-bit games via their Nintendo Entertainment System. Although 8-bit games weren't vastly innovative or even new during the 80s, the NES was what saved the gaming industry with their iconic first-party launches. In fact, the NES was so popular that many boomers today still refer to playing video games as playing Nintendo. The franchises of Super Mario Bros., The Legend of Zelda, and Metroid all spawned from this generation and continue to find wild success today, 4 decades later. These NES games were not only instrumental to saving the gaming industry, but changing the course of game development forever. For example, games like The Legend of Zelda and Dragon Quest were story-driven, something that was yet to be seen in mainstream console gaming. This, of course, led to a world full of interactive storytelling and eventually the RPG genre coming to home consoles. Generation 3 was truly a pioneer for modern gaming. The Mario franchise would define platforming and revitalize the gaming industry. The Zelda series introduced exploration and narrative value. Castlevania showcased what action-adventure games could be like, and Kirby pushed the NES to its limits with groundbreaking visual and audio features. The combination of these high-quality games with the NES's popularity led to a major boom in gamers, and thus revived the industry and pushed for developers to create more engaging, expansive video games to account for the growth. These new big games were key selling points for the consumers, of course, but the NES was also loaded with a bunch of technical advances that helped the home gaming market differentiate itself from classic arcade games. More vibrant colors, increased resolution, better sprites, improved audio capabilities, the direction pad, or as we call it today, the D-pad, and perhaps most notably, the ability to now save your progress within a game. I mean, this is a game changer, pun intended. Games like Zelda or Mario would be infinitely more difficult without the ability to save your progress. The ability for players to pause a gaming session and load it back up right where they left off allowed developers to create much longer, expansive games. They didn't have to worry about fatigue or cramming some sort of story into a shorter play window. Now, devs could create innovative worlds with immersive storytelling that wouldn't get repetitive because the player doesn't have to restart the game from scratch every time they boot up their console. It's such an underrated feature that we take for granted these days, but back then, this was truly groundbreaking. Without a save system, I highly doubt Generation 3 would have been as successful as it was. But I can't talk about Gen 3's success without mentioning the two biggest contributors to this era of gaming. We already mentioned Nintendo and the NES, but its counterpart, Sega and the Master System, were also a major player. Sega had been in the arcade business for a few years at this point and even had their own home video game consoles, but none were more successful than 1985's Master System. Sure, it never even got close to the NES's sales numbers, but it did provide legitimate competition for Nintendo. The Master System had a brand new design for the American market, stronger CPU, better colors, and more memory, making it considerably more powerful than the NES, which Sega was banking on as a major selling point. Despite the weaker hardware, the NES still continued to outsell the Master System though, because like we often say on this channel, consoles don't sell games. Games sell consoles, and thanks to Nintendo's official seal of approval and their new lockout chips, the highest quality games were often on the NES. Plus, Nintendo had a strict policy requiring third-party games to be timed exclusives for the NES, which, combined with their first-party lineup, made the NES the best place to play. In the end, the market share between Nintendo and Sega was 94% to 6% in the NES's favor. Still, the Master System was the NES's closest competitor, as by 1990, Nintendo owned 93% of the American market, with Sega at number 2 with an approximately 4% share of the market. That means Atari and all the other competitors only made up a measly 3% of all console sales in North America. It really is insane to think about how much of a chokehold Nintendo had on the gaming market. Sega had a lot better numbers in other parts of the globe, such as Europe and South America, but it still didn't get close to the North American market. By the end of their life cycles, the NES had sold a total of 61.91 million units, and the Master System sold 19.17 million. All the other consoles sold in Generation 3 added up to approximately 7.83 million units. So, if my math is correct here, Nintendo owned roughly 70% of Generation 3, with Sega at 22% and everyone else adding up to about 8% of the total global market. So, just like how the Japanese saved the American economy in 1941, Japan once again saved an American industry by crashing into the scene. Without the Japanese powerhouses of Nintendo and Sega, the entire gaming industry could have ended up very, very differently. With the success of their Generation 3 consoles and their respective mascots, Nintendo and Sega had unofficially begun the first era of the console wars, which, for all intents and purposes, is now basically over in 2025, but when the modern gaming industry was still in its infancy, the defiance that Sega presented to Nintendo, regardless of how effective it was a key part in catapulting the industry into the next generation. The direct competition and superior hardware the Master System introduced pushed Nintendo to fire back with a new console of their own, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, which in turn ended the third generation of gaming and marked the beginning of Generation 4. But that's a topic for another day. Until then, I want to hear from you guys. What did you think of Generation 3? Are you an old school gamer who was around for the phenomenon of the NES? Were you more of a Mario fan or Sonic fan? If you were around for the launch of the NES and Master System, which one appealed more to you and why? They were roughly the same price, with the NES costing $180 and the Master System $200. Sounds like a bargain, but adjusting those prices for inflation, that would put the NES at $530 and the Master System at $570 in 2025 dollarinos. God, I guess gaming was and always will be so freaking expensive. But I digress. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. It really does mean a lot. I appreciate you guys as always, and I will catch you in the next one.